Hi, you have found this video and either you were there at the session and listening again, or you missed the session or listening to it now, or maybe you came across it somehow on YouTube or an internet search. What you're seeing is a recording of these sessions that are alumni sessions for those who have been in the Certified Agile Leadership class, either the One Day Essentials or the One Day for Teams, or the One Day on Leading Organizational Change from the Scrum Alliance. My name is Scott Dunn, and in these sessions, once a month, we have open topic forums. So you get to listen to the questions that other previous students are raising and hear a group discussion about those topics, what we call lean coffee, or a topical session on a topic that the students have requested and voted up as the top vote getter in going through those. If you have not been in our Certified Agile Leadership courses, please take a look. Go to rocket9solutions.com and you'll find out more information there, or go to the Scrum Alliance. And you can find other certified Agile leadership classes there, not necessarily from me, but you can find other options there. We run the class twice a month on Eastern time and on Pacific time. So if you haven't been and are involved in the Agile transformation at your company or wish to be involved and support it, please take a look at that. Otherwise, enjoy the session you're about to listen into and hope it's of some value to you. Good luck on your journey. All right, welcome everyone to the May Lean Coffee for the Cal alumni. And we have a few things on the board to see, and then we'll walk through those and vote. I do have the session summary. I'll put that in chat for those who weren't here in April. And that's now in chat. So we'll start off. Let's start. We can do intros real quick for those who don't know each other, and then we'll walk through these because this is almost our breakout size. So I'll just go to my left. Alan, you're new. Want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Alan Daly. I live in the Phoenix, Arizona area. I've been Agile coach full time for, I don't know, 13, 14 years, something like that now. And was a Scrum Master before that, and then a software engineer before that. And Scott has done me a great service in getting me connected with this group, and I'm anxious to just interact and do things as I look for a job and try to stay hot in my connections.
Some thanks. I think everyone here knows me. Ryan?
I'm Ryan Dunn. I'm in Boise. I'm new to the growing Rocket 9 team. And my background for the last decade or so has been as a market research analyst in competitive intelligence, and most recently, about 5 years in technical recruiting for software startups. So I'm new to Agile and here to learn and discover what is being discussed.
Awesome. Yeah, Ryan just went through the Cal classes last week. No, week before that. And then Path to Agility this week. So he's been sheep dipped, I think. It's a lot. Scott Quiggle. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am the Enterprise Agile coach at Caterpillar. I've been in agility in its various forms since 2007. Just went through some early Cal before it was all split up and all that. So been around a while and lots of experience, and glad to join into this community.
Gracias, Mr. Quiggle. Ben?
Hey, I'm Ben Rodolitz out in Redondo Beach. Been an Agile coach. I just am finding the joys of being back in aerospace, and how do you apply Agile things to customers who want earned value measurements. So it's a staggeringly annoying concept. But anyway, I love getting together with people who've got lots of great questions and lots of good solutions. So I'm all ears today.
Hilarious. By the way, earned value just came up this week in Sierra Space, and someone's like, what the heck is this thing? Like, let's talk about earned value. Awesome. Glad you're here, Ben. Jay.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Jalen Henry. I'm the new intern. I study entrepreneurial leadership at ABC here in Nashville. And I'm here just to get some wisdom from y'all and learn how to apply it in my everyday life. And I can't wait to learn stuff new. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jay. Yeah, this is, I think, day 3 for Jay. So be nice to him, everybody. Okay.
Please, y'all,
All right.
please.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Brandon.
Oh yeah.
Hello, I'm Brandon Stevens. Been working with Scott for more years than I would like to count. I think going on 6 years or so. Enjoyed these conversations and have fun. And sorry for missing the last couple months. Just been busy, but like somebody else shared, just trying to keep my connections hot and trying to get back into the swing of things and back to normal life.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brandon. As a reminder for everyone, for the most part, these have been recorded this year, so they're on the YouTube channel. You can listen in if you want. Catch up that way as well. Thanks, Brandon. Brian?
Hey, good morning. Brian Fry. I work out here in the state of Hawaii for our IT organization. I've been involved with Agile projects since the early 2000s, and now am embarking on a subversive project here within the state government to try to introduce some Agile thoughts around, delivering value early and often, as opposed to maybe in 3 years, maybe. So, yeah, looking to learn and share whatever I can.
I love the attitude, Brian.
Brian, are you on Oahu?
I am.
Do you know the folks at Servco? We've worked with them on a lot of Agile stuff. There's some good people with good ideas there.
I don't, but I'll reach out to them. If you
Okay.
have any context, feel free to DM me.
I did know who was there. I don't know now, but I'll work something out.
See, there's already value right there, Brian, and showing up. You could call it okay. You could say that. I know it's early there, so glad you joined. And Crystal?
Sorry, I missed. Are we just introducing ourselves?
Yeah, we're just introducing ourselves and saying our most embarrassing moment of our lives. That's it.
I think that's a lie. So my name's Crystal. I am working for the provincial government in Victoria, BC in Canada, and I would love to come work in Oahu.
Another good connection there. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
I was
right.
in
Well,
Victoria a year ago in November. It's beautiful.
it is beautiful. Absolutely. I'm gonna put that one more. That's the wrong link. I'm gonna put the link to this in the chat so that we have it. In coffee. Give me one more. For those who just joined after I put this in now in chat, you have a link. What is it? Is not copying. Let me go to the meeting menu and copy it here and put it in. All right, now in chat you have the link. The other link I just put in was what one of my topics was. So I'll walk through the topics I put in. I'll give everyone else time, just really whatever's on your mind around Agile or what's happening in your company or your own career or trends you see or just questions, challenges you're facing, whatever that might be. For Lean Coffee, it's whatever topics anybody puts on the board, and then we just vote them up. So the most popular topic will get talked about first for about 5 minutes. We all agree or disagree about whether we want to continue that conversation. So it goes as long as all of us would like it to go. After we feel like it's done, we move on to the second most votes for a topic and discuss that. So by the time we're done here, we've all talked about the most important things to the group. Not only can you do this here, you can do it to run meetings at the workplace, kind of get a pulse of what's on everyone's mind. I used to run my my monthly staff meetings that way, so I always knew what was on everyone's mind. So it's just a great tool and option. And there's essentially full conferences done this way, which is essentially open space where all the topics for this whole conference are created real time and voted up, and it's very dynamic and a great experience. So if you haven't done an open space conference, definitely want to check that out too. I will walk through mine to give an idea what's on my mind, and then if there's other topics up here, like Alan's got one, I'll give you a chance to kind of tell everyone what's that about. So I will start top left. There was something that was announced a couple of weeks ago by Path to Agility. It's essentially a free assessment. They'll let someone just come and kind of like, as a sample, create a board that visibility of how are we doing. If I was to ask you, how's your Agile adoption going and how do you know? It's a nice, simple way of kind of getting an idea of what that tool can do. So I put that on there, and I put a comment on here from ALJ group that I'm a part of that's coming out of business agility. So they had a number of speakers at the Business Agility Institute's conference, and there's these great comments about agile scaling frameworks are not enough. That was a recent podcast. Organization transformation requires leadership transformation. Leadership mindset and culture are the keys to business agility. So I thought that was just good. 3 of the 5 business agility domains: people first, leadership, engaged culture, and flexible operations. Like, that's business agility. That's our sweet spot, I think, for us here, since you went through Cal, kind of our sweet spot. And then the other 2, responsive customer centricity and value-based delivery, are the principal domain of many of the companies in the agile industrial complex. They can stay and fight over those. We'll work with them all. I thought that was just it's an interesting perspective on things I thought was valuable. And then cost benefit of agile adoption. When I was drawing the Satir change curve this last class, I realized it really is cost benefit. You're going to pay a cost as you go down. Hopefully you come out the other side and get the benefit. I feel like a lot of companies stop halfway down and begin like hacking and modifying what they do with agile. This would be an interesting conversation here, what everyone else thinks of that. Is that a simple way of seeing it or not? And then this came up twice this week. What would you suggest for the next steps of the career of a Scrum Master? If someone's doing a good job, they want to move, grow and move forward, what's next? We'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on what would you recommend or suggest for someone in that situation. Those are mine. Again, you can create more by just clicking up here and typing in something under add topics and hit enter, and we'll put a card up there for us all to vote on. Alan, you've got one up here as well. You want to comment on yours for everyone?
Yeah, so in the Cal class, there was a reference to Larman's laws of organizational behavior, and they seem to define what some people call the frozen middle, or why can't management ever change kind of questions. And looking back on all the work I've done, I've often struggled with getting full engagement from that middle of management, if you will. And so I just wanted to hear some stories, or maybe offer some stories around what has helped or can help, or maybe what has failed, although I don't ask that, to overcome those laws that Craig Larman has so well articulated there.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that too. All right. Any questions, comments before folks vote? Otherwise, feel free to vote. We'll vote up. Yeah, I think you get 3 votes by clicking. Am I reading that right? Is everyone able to vote? If not, let me know. I might not have started it.
I think you just get 1 vote. That's what I got.
What?
I know.
That's unacceptable. Allow more votes. There you go. Look at that. Look how good I am. I'm very giving. Very nice. Now, so see if that, okay, I'm seeing more votes now. Gosh, if you only had 1 vote. Okay. Yeah, that one is interesting. I do want to hear the conversation there. Okay. Give it a few more seconds. Looks like we got 6, 7, 11, 14, 17. Okay, so we have most of us. Another moment to vote if you're interested in anything else. Otherwise, we'll start the conversation. And we can always add things later as we go along too. Let's do it. We'll start. All right. Okay, 5 minutes to start on Larman's laws. I'll put the link in there for those who don't know it or forgot. And begin the conversation.
So I'll start talking since it's my topic, but just to give some context and my recent experiences on the position I just came off of. I had managers who were promoting Agile and saying all the right words. And then as we worked with teams to get them started doing it, those managers were pushing for things like metrics or other things that would help their work, and they didn't care about the rest of the framework, right? Who cares about the rest of Scrum or a multi-team framework that they had? They were just pushing for things that made their life easier. And so it felt like they weren't really thinking about or expecting to change. They just wanted data that they wanted out of the teams. So it's a common thing everywhere I've been where sometimes management, middle management, the dev managers, the directors, the VPs, sometimes they're on board and they join you and then great things happen. And other times they just don't seem to care and they see Agile as a thing that only teams do. So I wanted to hear some stories about either affirming my experiences and or tell me some successes of how you've been able to get managers to engage and see change as something they're supposed to help with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Larman's laws talk about how the system, in order to change the culture, you have to change the system, especially in large organizations. And so that's what I'm asking about, right? Is how do you get managers, the people with the authority, leaders, if you will, to start looking at and changing the system as opposed to trying to just change the teams?
There was one, I'll start off with one story that I thought was really neat. And this is at the aerospace company. So we had an Agile leadership team. We needed a product owner, who wants something from this. All the leaders, which again were selected by the C-level. Here's all the top level people that they would want. They all voted for a particular person. Let's call him Paul. And I go to the CEO and say, okay, they voted. They want Paul. And he's like, well, you can't have Paul. I'm like, why not? Well, Paul's always flying off on these trips around the world. He's critical to sales. It doesn't happen without him. Pick someone else. Like, wish we could, but pick someone else. Go back to the group, say, here's what the CEO said. We got to pick someone else. So they had a whole list too. All the other people, they talked, discussed it, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, voted again. Paul. I go back. They voted again. They still say Paul. Like, there's really no one else. And it's frustrated at this point. Like, well, they can't have him, right? So I go back to the group. Like, I told them we can't have him. Then they started going directly to the CEO, and it ended up being basically an offsite where they really pushed to get Paul, and finally the C-level capitulated, gave Paul. Now the interesting thing is, I remember going to one of the meetings and talking to one of the team members. Now we're going to have all these teams working with Paul. So he's basically the chief product owner, but we're flat. So at that point we had 12 teams, one product owner. So lots of time with Paul. And I'm talking with his team. We're like, hey, this is cool, because we're going to talk with Paul about XYZ. He's like, who's Paul? Like, Paul's like one of the most important people in this organization. It's only like 250. Like, how do you not know who Paul? He's your product owner. Everything you've been building, it's essentially coming from Paul. You may not have realized that. But that shows you the disconnect with people doing the work for someone that they don't even know who that person is. And then you flip it to where now as product owner, he's there in front of them all the time. He's in front of them in the planning meetings saying, here's the priorities and here's why, here's the roadmap, here's where we're going. And his engagement with the team and his energy and passion around it. But I think partly because now he had direct access to the teams. He wants something done. He says it's a priority. He'd see it in less than 2 weeks. So he's getting this reinforcement in me, like, my goodness, if I want things, they just go in and knock it out and come right back, really flat. So his behavior changed, the team's ability to, respond, get them stuff, management coming alongside to resolve issues, night and day. But back to that point, we changed the structure to where Paul works now directly with them. Why? Because he's the product owner for multiple teams, not product owner removed by a couple or proxy, any of that stuff. That's what flipped it. At the same time, we had to really fight for it. But I think it was like the linchpin of success for that effort. So I'm gonna give more time, because I took more time than I realized. I am gonna vote to extend it. That's one example. That's a positive example, not a bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Let's extend it. Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in?
Excuse me, Alan, it's Brian.
Yeah.
I don't think this speaks directly to what you're asking, but I found that if you get between someone's ability to provide for their family, they're going to fight you every step of the way. So this change needs to be packaged in such a way that they can see the value for them too. I think that's the key for a lot of the changes that I'm trying to implement here at the state.
That's a good point. And so it brings up in my mind the chicken and the egg problem, right? Is the people with authority are the ones that need to change the system, but the people that need to change the system don't want to change the system, or are afraid, have fear or uncertainty about where their place is in
Yes.
some sort of new system.
So how are they gaining from changing the system? What makes it better for them when you change the system?
Right.
That's the perspective.
If you've got a system where people are managing people, sometimes if the change means they're not managing them, there's no reason to do that. And part of the core of what we're doing with an agile way of working is to create teams that can contain the entire chain of finishing work within that team. And the last few places I've worked at, they've had a real bottleneck at reviews. They had a rule that the stuff had to have a peer review, pull request, whatever you want to call it. And by not releasing that authority, and especially if that review had to be done outside the team, it was a real hindrance to getting stuff pushed through the system. Well, everybody's a critic. Jeez.
So
Nobody's gonna
I have
ask
one of
you-
my dogs is deaf. So
Or
she's
they're
very
joining
loud.
in and saying, I agree. Yeah.
Nobody's going to ask who let the dog out.
So yes, I agree. They need to see value in it somehow. So thank you for that.
One quick comment I'd add on that besides value. Did you want to say something on that, Ben? I don't want to cut you
I
off.
was just going to say, if you can't show the value, maybe you're the problem. In other words, if you can't come up with a good reason for that person to do that, then maybe it isn't the problem. I mean, we kind of know it is, but that's a good test. If you can't come up with a justification for that, there does have to be an organizational benefit for a positive change to happen. If it changes, helps the whole organization, but not that. So if your reward structure doesn't acknowledge that, then you've got a bigger problem, because then you do have the what's in it for me issue.
Yeah. So this this idea that I'm struggling to articulate, obviously, people who have authority to not change. In other words, I am a director of 64 people, and I can decide among those six, in my organization, in my pyramid, whatever you want to call it, my downline, I can decide to not do a change because I have authority up to a certain level, right? And the people above me, my vice president or my senior vice president, might not want to pull the seniority card or the authority card and make me change because they'll be reluctant to do that. And so to me, this is one of the forces that makes agile transformations fail, because they focus only on the people who have the least amount of authority to not change. It's one of the forces that says, go fix the teams. We don't have to fix anything else. And so I feel in this chicken and egg situation where I don't know how, I can't make it happen. In order to address Clegg Larman's rules of organizations and make change happen, the people who don't want to change have to change.
It was in Larman's class where there was a big aha for me, which was broadening the definition of what you do, but then slimming down the backlog so that everyone's looking at the same backlog. And maybe part of that what's in it for me becomes apparent if everyone's looking at the same top backlog. And then if something fixes something, is beneficial to something on that high level, if it's not necessarily helping your universe, but it is helping the higher level priorities on the big backlog, maybe that's part of the answer.
I've seen a couple of times, one with a small company, just 155 people, the other with Walgreens with 300 or 400,000 people, where they sort of set up little pilot teams. They didn't call them pilot teams. I can't recall what they called them, but they were able to sort of do things their own way and got a lot of traction, had a lot of productivity. Other people started getting interested and either wanted to be on those teams or they wanted to create something similar. I think one thing that can happen is, yeah, we've got status quo with Larman, but if you see other groups being more productive and more successful, then maybe that changes attitudes. And at the very least, it can give leadership, some kind of measurable saying, hey, look at what's happened, look at the interest we've got, look at how quickly we're moving along. And maybe that's something that's easier to do, if it's available.
That was another Larman comment, was creating culture bubbles. If you have the opportunity to do something, then you should be able to do that in your own bubble, and then other people would be foolish not to emulate that.
Yep.
This is a Craig Larman sales pitch today.
There is a lot of good stuff, and I'm making notes on those. If anyone else wants to capture things I missed, put them in there. But one is, I was going to add one other thing that was similar from what Larman said, where he would just say, we need to let our people know you have job security, you may not have role security. So sometimes the idea that, back to Brian's point, if I'm worried about paying the mortgage, I'm going to fight you. If I know I'll still be able to pay the mortgage, it just means my role gets redefined. That might be a status issue. That might be an ego hit, but it's not the same as I don't know if I can provide for my family. So the idea of you have job security, you may not have role security. And the reality is it's hard not to look at the world and say, seriously, like what you guys figured out 10 years ago is still perfectly fitting for today's world? No. I mean, how many of us have been through reorgs? So the reality is it happens all the time. I just think for like not awesome reasons, for land grabs, for political reasons inside a company. So I just want to put that out there too on Larman. One other small thing is I think the risk involved of changing some of that. So if we want top-down leadership, there's a VP once, she knew she had issues with her BMO director who was resisting all this stuff and kept saying, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? She's like, well, I think I've got an idea. Like, what are you going to do? She goes, will you take the job as the director of the PMO? I'm like, that's not. So basically, can I make a safe change here and not mess up everything? So I said no. And guess what? That same PMO director was there, I don't know, another year and a half, because she couldn't find a guaranteed safe way to switch it out. Right. So clearly she wanted to, but there's risk involved. So I think some of that senior managers like, I know the person's a problem, but maybe the risk is even worse than dealing with this person. I don't know.
And if I can just add to the positive stories here, very, very early in my coaching career, I had a client who I thought was large, but it was just over 200 people. But what we did is we used the Agile Manifesto as a kind of assessment and asked the teams, hey, if you were following this principle, what would have to change? And that turned into a backlog that we fed to the C-suite. So the C-suite got a backlog that came from the team saying, these are changes that need to happen in the company. And then the C-suite the CEO could be the product owner of that backlog. And then they could decide what things could be changed or what things are too risky or too expensive to change. But anyway, it turned the leaders into a change servant team for the rest of the organization. But I have yet to be able to do that successfully in a large organization.
We had a company where leadership created their own Scrum team with their own Jira backlog, and their team name was BORED, Board of Directors.
Nice.
Awesome. Real quick,
I don't know that we need to continue this. I'm happy with what I've got from it. I made lots of notes.
I got a minute. I'll add one thing because you reminded me of this, Alan, that on a pragmatic side is we took all the folks working on these teams, including management, and simply said, okay, on Post-its, everyone write down something. What's the manager doing currently? They list all that stuff, and what's a project manager doing currently? So all the things we need to make sure get handled, one item per sticky, got them all. Then over to the right, we made sticky for Scrum Master, product owner, team, right, other, right, maybe those same, and just basically said, map them over now. Who do you think handles work delegation now? Who do you think handles priorities now? And so it was the people themselves mapping out those changes and with agreement, like, yeah, that makes sense. So the managers gave up some posts to others, but the good thing is, the pressure release was they walked out saying that they still had 5 stickies for manager that they knew were still things that their job was okay. Same for project manager. Project manager still had things around budget, et cetera. So their job's okay. It was both clarifying and kind of a relief process. So it was a good
Yeah,
experience.
I've used a similar structure where I brought the managers in the room and said, okay, what are all the things you do now or prior to Agile? Now let's look at the Agile Manifesto. Of all those things you said, which are the ones that you will continue doing? Which are the ones that need to be do differently? And which are the ones you will no longer do? And we moved them into those 3 quadrants. And then we had another quadrant, final quadrant says, what are the things you wish you could do, but you don't have time, but now maybe you do have time? And added more stickies there. So that was the beginning of a map of a change path for middle managers.
I like that.
And that's been successful twice in my career. But again, larger the organization, the harder that is.
Yes, true. All right, let's make a note of that, and then we'll wrap this one up and then move on. So in topic, and then slide it over, and send that. Okay, next up, oops, grabbing the wrong area. ALJ. We'll see if 5 is more than enough. So any comments? I know I read through this. Oh, thanks for putting that in. Brian put something else in chat. I'll add those to the comments so it stays with the thread too. So this is the thing that got me the most. So we talk about business agility. These are those 3 domains. Well, there's 5. Here's the 3 that I think we here would say, yes, we're about that. So if you're kind of grouping our areas of focus and activity, people first leadership, engaged culture, flexible operations. And then maybe, what would you say on, is this the agile industrial complex on responsive customer centricity and value-based delivery? Any comments or thoughts on that?
Well, I've heard the term agile industrial complex for quite a number of years now. It comes as a reaction to agile transformation consulting companies that seem to go into organizations and their job is to perpetuate consulting fees instead of actually making changes. Now, I think some members of that group that think that are pretty extreme in their views. In other words, any consulting company, for some of them, almost any consulting company is that, right? That the agile industrial complex is there to keep themselves alive and keep earning money. And so I don't really like that term in that it kind of lumps a lot of good people in with bad and so on. But I'm interested in these 5 different areas that I haven't really seen them labeled like this. So my brain is going off kind of a tangent of the main topic that's here on those 5 different areas. But so I'll be quiet. I was just trying to provide that context or history of the agile industrial complex term.
Just as a quick comment and plug on this idea of value delivery. Ben had put a comment in there, and it's definitely worth watching what he's up to with, if your agile transformation was a product, right? And that mindset that you bring into it, I think is really cool because it should be a value-based, right, agile transformation as well. But just want to put that out there because I know Ben made a comment on that. Anyone else though on that, either on the agile industrial complex or these domains? Or is it was new for me. I hadn't heard these domains broken out this way.
Not sure why those 2 aren't also part. Maybe I'm missing the point. Why are those 2 not part of the leadership grouping that you had above?
Right.
What leaders wouldn't be interested in these things?
Agree. Like they're not bad. They're good. And yet, if you look at like what's in Cal, do we talk about being customer centric? Not at all. Do we talk about value-based delivery? We're not talking about delivery. And I think in the product owner, which I still think product is really the tip of the spear on transformation. If we don't fold in product, I think we're going to do ourselves a disservice and maybe even harm. And these absolutely are about product and delivering that product. So I think it's important, but it's not part of Cal. And it makes me wonder, like, is there a gap? You know, is there a problem that others are paying attention to it? I don't know what other, like, would you point to an Agile group out there like, boy, talk about doing amazing stuff in terms of product and Agile? I don't know what that would be. I can't point you to something. Delivery, Agile delivery, who owns that and is actually truly Agile? I can't point you to something on that. You know what I mean? It's interesting. And yet they're important, I think, right?
So are these different domains, the reason they're split out this way is because it's hard to focus or hard to do all 5 at once. And so a given coach might be really good at 2 or 3 of them, but not all 5, or a given framework is focused on 2 or 3 of them, but not all 5. That's what I'm starting to think.
Yeah, well, it begs the question. I'll put the yeah, here, I'll put the link. It's actually on the Business Agility Institute, and I'll put it in here as well, but I'll put it so you can pull up. So he is basically, you know, pulling from, I'll add it to the board. So here's one way I would put it. And I guess if we're all involved in transformation and change, I think that's a fair question now. Like, should we be if we don't do all these well, should we at least be aware where we point people to so that it does get the time and attention it warrants? And right now I don't know. I mean, that's why I still do the product owner class. I don't do the Scrum Master class anymore, but I can't point people. I recently got David Bland's book. I love it. I highly, highly recommend that for the mindset it brings. It's definitely worth the money. And I connected him actually with the Mountain Goat podcast, so that could maybe get, you know, a wider audience. But yeah, I feel like I don't know that. Well, Bob Niwa is essentially, you know, our product coach, because I think it's really important. And he's definitely about delivery, but I feel like as a whole, you look at Agile, you think of Agile coaches and like psychological safety and maybe scaling, you know, how do we scale? And, but I don't know if we're paying attention to some of these areas. And so I think that absence means someone else comes to meet that need, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. I'm a business. I still care about delivery. So you don't got something for me there, Alan? Okay. Well, I was just talking to Accenture and they actually have a playbook for that. Right? And then.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's my thoughts. Anyone else on that? Is it warrant attention?
Could you scroll up to the other 3 that are?
Like these are supposedly covered by essentially Cal.
So I can see why those are separated, because these are things that a leader would have to exhibit regardless of if there was a delivery at the end of it. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if you do these things, then if part of your business is the value-centric, customer-centric stuff, that's going to follow. So I'm wondering if these aren't the capability enablers of the other 2.
That's sort of how I saw it. Was the idea is to help you build that foundation or enable your teams or employees to do these things, and then they're able to take care of customers, develop product better, more quickly, more efficiently, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I also, as I sit here looking at them, and thinking back on my own time as a coach, this kind of dovetails into the previous conversation, right? That for me, I think organizations drive me to do the last 2, or expect me to do the last 2, and I haven't spent enough time in the first 3.
Yeah, there's someone who's a Scrum Master came in and supposed to be, you know, coaching the team, and then suddenly it's like, actually, we need most of your focus to go on, you know, delivery management, like 80%. But the same thing, if push comes to shove, what are they going to pay attention to? They're going to make sure we don't slip the dates and get these things delivered. They just will.
Right.
I think most of them aren't doing it well, so throw more bodies and the time and attention at it, instead of like fix the root cause. I agree with this idea. Maybe that's a presentation that a statement that could be made is like, hey, we're not saying no to this delivery. We're simply saying you're fighting a fire that if you would just do fire prevention on develop your leadership, develop an engaged culture, be flexible with your operations, you will get that. Not next week, maybe next quarter.
And the way I've seen it a lot of times is I think people feel handcuffed, whether they're department managers or whatever it might be. Cal, hey, we'll take the handcuffs off. Now see what you can get done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess Cal's meant to do that. Here's how you can actually enable your people. They come to you with problems, empower them to solve the problems, right? Like we want them to own this stuff. Try to coach them up. I'm gonna make a note of that real quick.
The flexible operations one is interesting to me because at large scale, like I coached for several years, or for a whole year, not several years, several years ago, I coached for a year at Costco. And, you know, when they're doing a significant change to membership benefits or things like that, it's at a huge scale. And those operations people, not without reason, but the operations people are very focused on what is the thing that we can do to make sure we do this correctly over and over and over and over again, right? And then you say to them, well, your operations need to be flexible. Well, okay, and under what environments, or what is the scope of flexibility of operations? In other words, can we do the same process over and over again, but in the background we're being flexible about it? From the customer point of view, it's the same thing and the same results, but in the background we're being flexible. In other words, that would be a really interesting conversation I would like to have with people that do operations on a large scale and talk about what the word flexible means to them.
Mm-hmm.
Is it scary or is it interesting? You know, what would it look like?
Yeah. Is it repeatable?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. They probably don't think of those two together in the same sentence a whole lot, but there's no reason it couldn't be. Right. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Good stuff. This might be one that I wouldn't be surprised if this one comes back up. Anyone else on the votes? All right. And we'll move on. Looks like we'll sneak in one last one. And we have a tie. Any tie breakers? Can anyone still vote to break the tie? All right.
I'm too new to comment on next steps.
I'll make this a little short to make sure we don't pinch the time too much. I'm sure everyone's got some thoughts on this. What would you recommend for someone that's trying to move forward? Whether that's training, books, I don't know, whatever that could be, volunteering. Imagine most of us have been a Scrum Master before. How did you get to this incredible position in life that you are now?
It kind of depends on the you're dealing with, right? If they're more technically bound and they want to get like more into development, you know, there'd be a different path than someone who was more, I don't know, business focused and could, you know, move into a product owner position.
What was it for you, if you don't mind me, Brian, asking you, what was it that helped you move forward? Whatever your space was, how did you move forward and grow? And what helped you the most?
Well, I was more in the latter, where I have a technical background, but not in IT, not in computer systems, but systems engineering. And so I went more the business side, where it seemed easy for me to have conversations with people who didn't understand technology and to describe it, for me to be able to describe it to them in ways that they could appreciate. So I went into the product owner role and then kind of progressed in that direction.
That came naturally, or yeah, go ahead, training?
No. So I had the good luck of taking some classes with Mike Cohn and, you know, really adopted that and had a good mentor in the company who was very much evangelist for Agile methodologies. So I was able to really grok the Agile manifesto because of the training I had, and then also with the support I had from what I'd consider an Agile mentor, and then moved quickly into that direction as from Scrum Master to product owner.
Interesting. Okay. Awesome. Thanks. Anyone?
Community has been profoundly important and beneficial for my career in this work. Scrum user groups, conferences, meetups, early morning lean coffee at some sandwich shop somewhere, just staying connected and learning and providing learning to others was just because there's so much to explore. Like the Scrum Master job position looks so small, I guess, or narrow. It looks like it's narrow, but it's so huge. There's so many things you could learn to make that job better and to then grow to an Agile coach or grow to a dev manager with good people interaction skills, or to grow, there's so many things to learn. And so the community provides some of that learning and information and exposes you to directions to go.
Yeah.
And I add to that, find people to follow on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Right. Yes. That's
Or if you look on Reddit, I was just looking just to see what topics there were on Reddit, and there's a whole Scrum coach. There's just one that's just Agile, and they're both fairly large. 40,000 people
dang.
in these groups with all kinds of questions and advice and suggestions and whatnot. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I hadn't thought that. I've read it. That's good. I have seen stuff on LinkedIn learning. Some of it was just completely horrible. Some was actually pretty good. The DevOps stuff was really good. The guy saying that Scrum is good only if you're making things like stop signs over and over and over again, that guy was wrong. And that guy has his methodology out there, by the way, too. So
Yeah.
it's really...
There's got to be some uncertainty. I saw someone, I'm assuming he was a doctor or the head of his own medical practice, and he was asking about Agile in a medical environment. And I kind of said, well, Agile is best for a lot of uncertainty. Hopefully you don't have that in your environment. But he was looking, he wants to try to improve things within his practice if he can.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's funny. A medical professional was looking for some Agile help, and it turned out the guy who I know helped them introduced him to the idea of Kanban. With what are things you want to do to improve your practice? Break those down, and do one at a time and get them done. So there was room for it. Yeah, you don't want the diagnosis to we're going to be in a 2-week cadence to do your diagnosis. Maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I heard you right, Ben. You're saying that you can do other things besides Scrum and still be Agile?
Oh yeah, no, I think so. I'm looking into that. It was a good comment in the chat too about learning change management kind of skills, upping your skills. You should take a look at that chat. That was a good comment.
That one's huge, Crystal. I'm glad you put that in, because I think we're introducing change, but we never stop and think, do I really understand just change management, organizational change? Or what I've seen is just called as OC, I think. Like that's its own thing. I didn't realize that's its own thing. Yeah, thank you.
I was lucky at Chevron, 2 different places. They actually had a change management person at the team of teams level. And I thought I was pretty good at explaining to people why we should do it, but boy, they dove in and they really made the discussion palatable. And that kind of touches a little bit, Scott, on the next one about cost benefit, of ways of articulating the cost benefit in the context of change and change management. So,
Well, yeah, I guess so. You're right. your
It's not
positioning.
surprised. You're right.
Ben, there's still moments where like he's actually got a really good idea there.
It's concept Brownian motion. Every so often, randomly something happens.
See, that's the Pavlov effect of like that, the randomization, what makes me look forward to maybe he's got something now, because you just never know, right? But boy, I keep hitting the lever, like maybe he's got something. I want to hear.
Even a blind chicken finds a kernel.
This is good. It's nice when we can talk about stuff and learn and actually have a little bit of fun too. It's close to a wrap. I'll let this one end. Any other comments on that? I'm putting the chat comments in there, but anyone else want to weigh in for
Some of
closing?
the things that you heard about today, like looking into things like less large scale Scrum, path to agility, training from the back of the room, all these other different things that you can aggregate into your Scrum Master toolbox are all kind of interesting. And all the soft skills about coaching better. Those are all cool things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of classes I took that I really appreciated.
There's a whole skill set and a lot of write-ups around leading without authority. And one of the things that when a Scrum Master comes to me and says, what are the next steps? And I'm like, well, you kind of have a career choice, because you're, at least, especially at Caterpillar, which is such a large organization, the Scrum Masters that are part of the central service organization, Alignment Global Program Management, have the opportunity to go be a Scrum Master for teams in different parts of the organization. So is agility your thing? Do you want a career in agility, right? So the coaching path and all of those tools and all the stuff we've said already is a great way to, grow your skill set and advance in a career along agility, but that might not be your thing. You now have experience leading without authority, running Scrum teams. And if you make a connection with that part of the business that you're in, they may hire you for a role in leadership or something along those lines, helping their organization. And so it really depends on your opportunity and your interests.
Huge. One last thing I'll add on that's similar, Scott, is I'll tell people straight up, if you bring about this change in your organization without authority, that's like gold to senior leaders who do want to bring about change. They don't want to disrupt the org chart. They'd love for someone to be able to come in, make that change happen without having to screw with the organizational structures. It's worth a ton. You can kind of write your ticket if you can do that well. So you're right, that can become its own path of like, you can title me whatever, bring me over to your area, your division, I'll make all that stuff happen. And then you can move me somewhere else in the org. I'm never an agile coach. I'm just bringing about change. So, really glad you brought that up. Really glad. Excellent. I'm gonna move that one over. Good stuff today. I hope that was worth the cost of coming. You get what you pay for. By the way, so Ben, tell us about the thing you posted. You're doing a presentation?
Yeah, just real quick, from looking back on transformations that didn't go as well as we thought, part of the root cause for me seemed to be a lack of a shared understanding of why we were doing it. And the person I'm co-presenting with, Lakshmi, has kicked off a lot of new product discussions using a technique called Lean Inception. And it dawned on me that if we treated our transformation the way we treat a product, in other words, when you start with a product, there are steps you go through, and there are a lot of different ways to do it, but you always have a shared understanding. You decide what does it do and what doesn't it do? Who are the personas that get impacted by it? What are their journeys? What are the features that go into this product? And the mapping of that to creating an agile transformation seems really strong to me. So we're going to be talking on Tuesday the 30th from Agile Coaching Exchange. If you go to Meetup, you can see it, or you can reach out to me. We're going to talk about how we might design an agile transformation using the techniques we might use to design a product, to get that upfront shared understanding and buy-in.
So funny story, I've been asked twice in the last month for a transformation playbook. And before I committed to doing anything like that, I kind of used an excuse to back off a little bit. I said, well, I know this guy, Ben, who's given a talk on this in our that I'm going to attend on May 30th. And so before I begin
Oh,
to
funny.
put anything to paper, I want to see what he has to say about it.
Yeah, I'm actually right now in my new posting is trying to convince hardware groups in aerospace that maybe agility might help them. And this is a great test for this this adorable theory that we have.
It's an endless challenge at Caterpillar because you have both extremes, super technical people in autonomy and automation and remote control of these massive machines and everything, all the way down to people on the line building parts from formed steel and supply chain and everything that goes with it. So where do you find these opportunities to transform? And it's going to be a little different for every part of the business, right? So how do you build a playbook that's general enough to be useful, or don't you, right? Or are you building a playbook with different chapters for different types of teams? I don't even know if I have an answer to that yet.
I try to get places to rename their playbooks to be their toolbox, so that instead of this is the order you use these things in, these are the things at our disposal, and let's sequence them in a way that helps us get to where we're going. I mean, this may be a radical idea, but maybe understand what you're trying to do, get your prioritized, break it up into small bits, do a little bit at a time. I know that's crazy talk, but
Sounds familiar.
maybe it'll work.
All right, I'll finish this for now, and we'll reuse it for next time. Wonderful session, everybody. So glad everyone came. Hope to see you again. I'll check the votes for the topics. So take a look at the resources board for voting on the next topic, and or if you're interested in the birds of a feather sessions. This last week we talked about maybe doing a P2A birds of a feather or government, etc. So put your votes out there. We'll coordinate something. If you have any questions in the meantime, reach out to us. You can reach out to me or Ryan. Ryan's probably better about following up than I am. That's my guess. So hope to see you all again soon. Thanks for coming.